Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is your two hosts, host,
double
me,
hosts,
Steve, and
twin
Pascal
hosts.
Floor. The hair's coming back, Pascal.
Yeah, it is. And it's still growing all right, I think. There was a time, though, where, because we've discussed things about receding hairline and all that kind of stuff, and I can definitely tell that, especially here, right? You can't really see it right now on the camera, but that's like here, I think it is. It is getting thinner. But it's not as bad as I thought that it would be. I expect it much, much worse. So I probably still have a couple of years before I need to be concerned about it. And then I'm in the 40s and don't really care about it anymore.
Yeah, I think at least for me, mine seems to, it got worse and then it has kind of stalled. At least that's my hope. Like, it's just not really getting worse over the last few years. It's not the best, but it's nothing terrible that I'm like upset about. After we chat about it, actually, I looked up midoxanil. I don't know if I say that right. It's not a very nice word to try and spell, but I think I say it right just about. I might pronounce it slightly wrong. And it's like, I think it's like Regain or something is the shampoo a lot of people use. But I just looked into it. My very short thoughts on it were, it's quite an expensive shampoo and you have to use it regularly. And if you stop using it, most people lose everything they had. And it's like, so you're kind of on it's like medication for life, essentially, is kind of what you're on there. And it might not do all that much for you. So I was just like, I don't know if I even want to invest in it. Oh, the other thing that really put me off was a lot of people complained about, it's kind of a bit of a day-to-day nuisance. Like, you have to apply it, I think, twice a day. And it leaves quite a sticky residue on your hair and it kind of gets everywhere. And I was just like, man, I don't know if I'm willing to sacrifice those several things, because I almost prefer shaving my head just for the simplicity of not having to mess around with. Like, I don't design my hair every day, or I don't put product in it very regularly. Like, it's just nothing I'm into.
Did you do it in the past?
When I was at school, it would, like, every day, I think, was like put stuff in it. But
because I had it as well, there was a time where especially when I still was working in an office, the first thing that I did when I was arriving at the office or at school, whatever, I was doing my hair.
At office as well, yeah.
I can't recall when the last time was that I did my hair, even right after a barber, when the hair is actually pretty proper and you should take care of it so that it looks good. I don't do this anymore. So,
your wedding?
At the wedding I did it. But this was a pure exception, you know? And in the past, I was very, very, very much about kind of always having my hair done properly, never leaving the house without having some wax in it or some kind of hairspray so that it really is properly sitting. And when there was rain and also wind outside, I was actually getting pissed off because of the weather.
This reminds me,
Times
the worst.
change.
You probably had this, Pascal, and I'm sure many of our listeners had this, but I used to play like Sunday football, Saturday football, whatever day it was, or like training sessions. And I'd always do my hair for that too, because as a kid, this is like what you do. And the gel would, like, if it was raining, it would like leak into my eyes. And I was like, fuck this shit. It was so annoying. So yeah. And you'd have like these
Steve,
white droplets.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I was following your recommendation and I watched the Netflix documentary about Beckham.
Oh, yes.
And Beckham was probably also, I don't know how it was for you, but probably for you even more so than for me as a British guy, kind of a role model back then. Everyone wanted to kind of be like Beckham. And I still remember the time with the Adidas Predator coming out. And also that, do you still remember? Mohawk? No, not the Mohawk, but this, what was it? It was kind of a plastic thing that you kind of push into your hair so that it's when it's a little bit longer. Hairband. Yeah, it was kind of a hairband, but kind of in a plasticky kind of fashion, which really bites itself into the hair. And Beckham kind of was somewhat of a role model. And by the way, it was a great documentary and very much nostalgia.
Yeah. I felt so bad for him in some moments. Like, he seems like a really down-to-earth, like, humble guy. And, like, that whole oh yeah, because I said it was Argentina, of course, where he did the kick out with his foot and got a yellow card, and everyone hated him in the UK for ages. I don't remember hating him at any point, but I was also not obsessed with him. I did have a Real Madrid shirt with 23 on the back when he went over there, and I was just like, the main thing I also remember, sorry, just thinking about that documentary, I was like, dude, why did you leave? Like it just didn't make sense. He was like at the pinnacle of his career still at Real Madrid. At least this is what they showed in the documentary. I don't think it was actually as true. Like I don't think he was at his best at Real Madrid. But then he left to go to fucking the US, where of course it was never going to go well.
Yeah, he was one of the first to actually introduce this kind of. I don't want to call it a trend, but you see it all the time nowadays, at least, that the stars, the football stars who are actually arriving at the tail end of their career are then going to maybe the Mideast or something like this, make a shit ton of money, ending their careers there.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, maybe he was the first one to introduce something like this, because he clearly made a shit ton of money over there. They made a huge offer. And for me personally, when I watched this documentary, I couldn't even recall that he was that good, simply because he was a little bit overshadowed, at least for me, in Germany, by people such as Zidane, Ronaldo, Luis Figo, all those people who are so much bigger than he was. And I don't know how it was in Britain, though. But for someone in Germany growing up, that was more so the absolute elite.
I think the documentary did a really good job of making Beckham seem amazing, and like they did a really good job of. I think they had to, because I mean, he didn't need to do this. Like, it's really good for Netflix and the people behind it or whatever. But Beckham himself, like, he could go living his life without doing this documentary. So he wouldn't have done it if it didn't make him look pretty like positive in many ways.
Yeah, that's what I even said to Katie as well, because she was still. Of course, she's not that much into football or anything I like, but she remembered that he had an affair. And in the documentary, it's not really clear whether he had an affair or whether it was just kind of gossip.
I think the way I took it was the way he spoke about it. He didn't deny it.
Exactly.
So I'm That's like, he thing. Definitely had it then.
Katie even asked me, because I wasn't aware of that. I couldn't recall, because back then when I was younger, I was not following gossip like this. For me, it was just football. And Katie was even saying like, okay, did he deny it? And I said like, no, they didn't deny it. They just talked about it, that it was kind of the worst time of their life. And the newspapers came up with a lot of stories that weren't actually true and all that kind of stuff. But it was a very, very entertaining documentary, which had lots of nostalgia in it, to be honest. Also that the beginning of his career, when Britpop was also big with Oasis and all that kind of stuff, and they played a couple of tunes there. It was just freaking great, man.
Yeah. This is when I was really into football, and when I loved Manchester United. So like that kind of family of players, that's when I loved it. And so looking back, it was like lots of, like you said, lots of nostalgia. That and because both of us I've probably drifted even further from football than you. I don't know if you keep up with it at all, but
not anymore, Steve. And it's funny because a couple of years back, you may remember that I was still a member of Borussia Dortmund, of the fan club, and I was visiting or going to games and all that kind of stuff. And ever since I'm together with Katie, it has completely died down, because I have better things to do with my time than spending 1.5 to 2 hours of watching some football on the weekends. And this is not to actually say that it's not all right to do this. I know that other people are very much into it, and if they have the time, if that's high on their priority list, I think it's totally fine. But for me personally, I have other things to do. Or I want to spend my time differently than this. And ever since I have family, this has completely died down. Same goes though for also NFL, so American football, which is something that I very much liked to watch on a Sunday, which is something that I'm not doing anymore.
Yeah, I don't think I watch any. Really, the time I watch sport is if Charlotte's like, "Hey, there's a big game on. Let's like watch this." And normally it's like a World Cup or something like this. There's something like that happening. But yeah, I just don't. But I think for me, it's partly environment driven. Like I used to play loads of video games. I was at uni and everything, and that's because other people played them. like I'm big, like whoever's in my environment, I end up moving towards them. And because I don't really have, like, it's me and Ada most of the time, or Charlotte when she's at home because she's working all the time. I end up just watching anime. So what's the one I've been watching? Tokyo Ghoul. Have you watched that?
Tokyo Ghoul, yeah.
Or Ghoul.
Season
I always
1
get that wrong.
is great, and then it just boils down, unfortunately, because it had such great potential. The OST, so the soundtrack, the introduction soundtrack, is amazing.
Great. Yes.
Also, once again, the character development in season 1 is fantastic as well. And then, unfortunately, with season 2, it just spirals down. And then it doesn't really follow the plot anymore. And it has so many twists and turns that don't really make a lot of sense anymore. It's kind of like, I don't know, a successful Hollywood movie, the first movie, and they are trying to grab the success and rushing then the next movies that then turn out to be very shit. And then all of a sudden it's Saw 6 or Fast and the Furious 5.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking, where the hell, or how the hell did we get here to this point?
Yeah. Or I think of Pokemon where they're like on 600 and something now, where it's like a fridge Pokemon.
Funny enough, there's kind of the trend again in the around kids now, that they are very much into Pokemon again, which is funny because this is how we grew up as well. And seeing now Tony and Hugo getting into Pokemon is very interesting, but they're now having kind of Pokemon cards. There are so many Pokemons where I'm just like, what the fuck is this, right? I think it was more than enough to have like 150, but now it's just, I don't know, some monstrosities. Before that, it was kind of cute and made sense, and now it's kind of like, I don't know, a keyboard that turned into a Pokemon or something like this.
I see reels now and then pop up where someone, like they're at like a Comic-Con or something, and they interview people and they're like, what's the name of this Pokemon? And they're just like, they have no idea, and they make up some random thing. And it's like Keyboardamon or something ridiculous, and it's just like, it's gone a bit downhill. But I would, that's something... I still relive my childhood through anime a little bit in some ways, but having an excuse to like go do Pokemon and everything, I quite like that.
I want to watch those kind of nostalgic animes together with my kids, and we have just started watching Pokemon, which is something that we can't regularly do because Katie also wants to watch along with it. So whenever we find the time, we four together, which is something that we don't do in the midst of the week because we don't find the time for it. If then on the weekend, we may be watching like 1 or 2 episodes. So it's very, very slowly happening. But this is great, man. I mean, it hasn't really aged well, such as also Katie is now watching Naruto. And I'm watching along with her just on the side though. And this one hasn't aged that well as well, unfortunately. Fortunately, unfortunately, because it also kick-started or was one of the reasons why anime has gotten so popular. And with popularity, same goes for the fitness industry, comes more money. And with more money comes, of course, a better development most of the time. And that's why the standard of animes nowadays is so high. Animation grade, music grade. The tempo is also much, much better. Because Naruto and also the early ones in One Piece and also Dragon Ball, it's so goddamn slow. Yeah. It's unbelievable. Like 20 episodes before something is actually happening. Like, and it's the same fight. And 20 episodes, they're just like going back and forth talking about something. Whereas animes nowadays, it's much, much better pacing. Right? And they are getting straighter to the point, which is something that, I simply enjoy. It just goes with time, I think.
Yeah. I'm actually this will be the final point probably on talking about anime because or these sort of general topics. I am like the more like I've said this to you, Pascal, but I think like I think Attack on Titan is now my number 1 in terms of anime, just because it's every time I see any sort of like little clips about it. Like, I could rewatch an episode, I feel like, over and over again. The second time I watched it through, I loved it. And I'm so hyped for this final episode, which I think airs on Saturday. Is that
4th,
right? Yeah, the 4th. And maybe it will change what I want to get tattooed on the week after, but I don't think it will. I don't know. I have, like I said to you before, I don't know the ending. So
Yeah.
I'm hyped for it, but I'm also like, I don't know, once it's over, it's like you lose that anticipation of it continuing.
Yeah, but the author is planning of rewriting the ending.
Oh, is he?
Because he wasn't satisfied with it himself. So that's the news right now. So maybe there was coming an alternative ending to it, which I don't know, is all right. You know, you don't. The thing is that people get so caught up with those kind of things, but in itself, does really one bit of a movie or a show really destroy the entire thing? Like, unless it's Game of Thrones, for example, where the entire last season is shit. But you get the point. Just because the ending may not be what you had in mind, right, doesn't mean that the entire show is now shit.
No. I really don't mind how it finishes. Like it,
No.
like I look, the animation from the last like couple of episodes have just been like unreal. And,
That's
like,
the thing, and I think that
it's so exciting.
exactly when it comes to filmmaking and all that kind of stuff. I think good movies, it's not just like the story that needs to be great, but also then the music, the camera angles, how light is being played with. The artistic aspect of things, right? Character development, twists and turns, unpredictability of things. And I think that, for example, for me at least, Attack on Titans had it all.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm excited for that, and I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to actually go down another route here with anime, but let's save it for another time.
How's everything on your end? Last time I remember us speaking, I don't know if this was the last time, but it was you were kind of having that weight gain. Has that changed? Like, has it come back down?
It has come back down. All of a sudden, I was stepping on the scale, and I was even contemplating and writing you and sending you a message, and it was on the weekend, and I thought, like, no, I'm not going to send Steve just like, hey, man, scale weight was coming back down again. It came all the way back down to 78.4 even, which is, of course, a massive discrepancy to what it is that I've described, where I was over 80 kilograms already. And I was wondering why it still is hovering there. Sorry for the noise in the background, guys, if you can hear it. I just have someone here who's doing a little bit of construction work, so sorry for the noise. Can you hear this?
I can hear it ever so slightly, yeah.
Okay. I will just continue then. I'm going to try to edit it out. But overall, I was actually quite happy and relieved that it was coming back down, because of the things that I was already talking about, that it didn't really make sense to me. I wasn't really sure of how much medication can play into your metabolism and impact and alter that on such a short notice. And I'm quite relieved that it came back down, to be honest, because this also, for me personally, gives me a little bit more time, again, to be in a net positive surplus without feeling absolutely awful about myself.
And did you notice, first of all, two questions. Did you change anything, or did you keep on the plan? And did you notice anything in your physique change? Did you tighten up or anything?
So first, I didn't change anything about my nutrition, because
Solid.
I thought that if I was getting to the point right now, then at some point I would stall out, because I'm not eating that much, and dropping the calories didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Secondarily, I can't really tell whether I've tightened up. And that has to do, I think, once again, with a little bit of my loose skin. It's so hard to really detect those visual changes, unfortunately. I would love to be able to say, I could definitely see things. And even I was going in there, took some pictures, because I had pictures from when I was weighing kind of 80 kilograms. Took some pictures, but the lighting wasn't that great. And by that, I couldn't really compare the two pictures with another. I have the feeling that there was somewhat of a visual difference, but could you tell that it's more than 2 kilograms of a difference? Not really.
Yeah, I think it's also, I think the fact you took pictures helps. But if you're in your off season, you're not constantly body checking, so you're not really noticing these minor fluctuations. And man, lighting, the more, again, time, like I've had many competitors this season, like lighting can just make such a difference. Even the tiniest change in lighting, where it's like to the point where it's a little bit frustrating because you're looking for like minor differences in like, hey, do you have an extra glute line or there or not? And it's like, hey, if the lighting's just slightly different, it completely throws it. So like for sure, when you're trying to detect even less of a change, maybe when you're in an off-season phase, like you're just not going to be able to see it. And I, the thing I wanted to reflect upon just finally was the fact you didn't change anything. I think that's a really good lesson for people who are listening, where if you have no reason to it's kind of like in a cut phase. If you've been in a large calorie deficit, you haven't lost weight for a week, like don't immediately think you need to change something. Just kind of trust in the process. It's even more so in an off season. The number of changes you need to make to your nutrition is so minimal once you're kind of in a very stable place in terms of like just in a small surplus moving upwards.
And I think that just staying calm and level-headed is the way to go. And I know that this is much, much easier said than done in this situation, especially when it bothers you. It may get to your head because we are all most of the time emotional creatures. But sorry for the noise in the background, man. But especially in that situation, it's super, super important to ask yourself the question of like, has anything really changed? Am I doing things differently to what it is that I had in the past? And would it really make sense that I'm now gaining at X velocity in comparison to the past when I didn't really change anything at all, right? And sometimes when there's lots of discrepancy in between, so a couple of years in between, maybe it can be like this, right? Because we're getting older, maybe we are getting more sedentary without us knowing about it, but in comparison of just a couple of days and weeks in between, probably not a lot has changed, especially for people such as you and I, Steve, who are very much robotic and have kind of a set schedule that we are running with nearly each and every single day.
Yeah, I'm completely the same. With what's happening with your training? How's that going? I think I saw one of your posts, you were trying out that kind of variation on the cable row. Did you make a few exercise rotations this time around?
Yeah, especially on pulling movements, funny enough, where it's also that bent over seated cable row as well. Feels freaking amazing, to be honest. This has been one of those movements where I was just like giving it a try, and it feels so great. Yep. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Just connect with it.
Yeah, because you can really use your legs to push yourself away and put yourself in a position where you are so rock stable that momentum is nearly impossible. And it just feels great. Also that kind of rounding over slightly, putting your lats or just the entire back into a stretch position. And it just feels amazing, to be honest. This is one of those changes. Other than that, no, not that much. But I am much less worried about consistency in the range of motion anymore. Yesterday it was week number 2 of this mesocycle, first leg session. I was doing leg extensions and I was just wrapping things out up to the point where I was doing just partials anymore. And people always bring up the saying, and I was guilty of that myself, like, yeah, but you need to have kind of a certain range of motion to keep kind of things consistent enough to measure progress. But I'm not entirely certain anymore whether this is actually something that I hold on to, that notion. Because I think that if you have the vast majority of your repetitions in a certain range of motion and in a stimulative rep range, does it really matter then if you're then having like 1, 2, 3 repetitions going less of a range of motion? I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, I know what you mean in terms of that standardization so you can track progress. And I think in your scenario, you could standardize it or you could track it in a way where it's like, hey, I did 10 full rep and then there were 3 partials that were all 50% of range of motion at least, maybe. You could do that if you wanted to. But I also can see the argument for like, hey, and I know this kind of, in a sense, risks things, but I don't know how risky it is. Because what we know for hypertrophy is you need to basically train hard, so get close to failure and like do enough total volume, but not too much. So long as you're progressing over time and you're recovering on time, you can be pretty sure you're achieving all of that. And so if you're like, at least have an eye on loads and repetitions to some extent, that you could just kind of go in the gym and like work hard. And also as an advanced lifter, the you're not seeing PRs that often. So it's like I do think there's an amount of tracking you need, but I think your kind of point here was like the precision of that tracking doesn't need to be as high as you think some people tend to think it needs to be.
Yeah, and also just to elaborate on that point as well, it's not that on a weekly basis I'm forcing reps out that actually aren't really repetitions anymore, and on paper I'm just noting down, oh, another added repetition, when in reality I'm just always doing partials, and each and every single time I'm noting down another new repetition that I've accomplished. It's less and less range of motion. That's not what I'm saying. I think that having somewhat of a guideline and a structure is the way to go. And I would, if you want to actually then put some kind of system behind it, and you're aiming for another repetition, then I would say that standardize those, and then on top of it, you can do maybe some kind of partials, and maybe you don't even count those or something like this, or you set some limitations, such as, I don't know, we have, you always bring up the example about kind of eyesight when it comes to the range of motion on lat pull downs. Something like this, but also then for repetitions, where it's kind of like, okay, I'm not allowing more than 2 partials at the end of a set or something like this. This way you can also count yourself or hold yourself accountable, and also you're setting some limitations so that it's not just like only partials that you're adding over weeks and weeks and weeks, then you're noting them down as full repetitions, and then you're losing sight of what it is that you're actually doing. I think that this is, though, an overcomplication. I wouldn't recommend it if you're then working together with athletes. I think that if you work with a coach or athletes, I think standardizing the range of motion is the way to go, for the sake of simplicity, for the sake of analyzing the data, because the coach doesn't really know better. And tracking things as accurately as possible is the way to go. But if you just do it for yourself, then maybe find some rules. And those rules are not really set, where it's like, okay, you have to do X, Y, Z in order to make progress.
Yeah, this is a discussion I've had with clients where, like, I like having, if they have full range of motion sets, I mean, some people will do it to the point that RAR or failure when they can't get full range. And with others, I've kind of described this, hey, you have like a full range, and then you allow yourself to drop to at least eye line where you're to your RAR. So you just let that slight drop off, because it seems to make sense for some movements where you have that ability to get partials. But yeah, if you just let them go, hey, yeah, just keep going until you can't move. And it's like, well, how do you track that, standardize that? And I like the structure, and I like kind of having the ability to assess things. The only time I've ever experimented, like just kind of throwing the logbook out, is like for arms a little bit, where I've just been like, hey, fuck it. I'm going to do a couple of sets on whatever exercise I like. I'm going to take it to 1 to 0 RAR or fail like every week. And I'm just like, it's so low risk for me, because I know it's really low volume. It's a muscle group that I'm not too worried about. So I just throw it on the end there, and it's kind of relieving a little bit when you don't logbook and you're just like, I know I'm working hard. My biceps are recovering on time. Like I'm producing a growth stimulus. I don't think I could approach my quad training the same way, because I couldn't be as sure that they would be growing. It's kind of similar to like tracking your macros versus like guesstimating. Like if you track them, you can be a bit more sure, especially if you're maybe, I don't know, have a tighter goal or boundary. Like, hey, the looser you can get, the less sure you can be that you're doing the right thing in that kind of scenario.
I think this is also, though, where experience pays off.
Absolutely.
And comes into play. I think this is something that you can only, or I would advise at least, that you only pull it off if you are very much in tune with things, and you also have learned about how to push appropriately, how to train appropriately, the technique, intent, concentration, focus is all there, and you can replicate that on a consistent basis. And this is also, I think, what probably many people say and recommend when it comes to jumping on steroids, because they always say like, okay, take your time to learn how to train properly and eat properly. But what does that even mean? If you are at the early stages of your lifting career and also kind of your nutritional endeavors, you can't really quantify this. But now us, for example, after having done this since 10 years now, we have a much, much better understanding of what this truly means. And now I can understand what they are saying when they are recommending that before jumping on steroids, so that you really get the most out of those steroids that you're taking.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because I think too many people use, and I mean, that's the joke, right? Up the dose. Like when things aren't working, up the dose. It's like, hang on. Like if you know what you're doing training nutrition wise, there's probably so much more you can do there before you need to up the dose. And that's where people really get themselves into like risky territory, and it's kind of scary. And it's on a kind of related note, talking about social media again and reels. I forget what his name is. I think he's called like Johnny Muster or something on Instagram, and I don't follow him, but his reels come up, and man, he is just joking about tren all the time. He's just like, I don't know, like I want my dog to grow, and he like gives it creatine and the dog doesn't grow, and then he's like, I know, let's get him some tren, and he like gives it tren and he turns into like this huge golden retriever. And he's always making jokes about steroids. It's crazy how far we've come from like, okay, they were probably unnecessarily demonized, to flip the script. Now it's just a joke. Like, like I think a lot of kids look at it that way.
I think that's a big problem of social media nowadays. That also drug use in general, alcohol consumption, doing extreme things to get clicks and attention. I don't know. I mean, social media is still such a fairly new phenomenon. We still don't know the potential consequences of it. It's the same as kind of smoking cigarettes back then. Or, smoking cigarettes is a very perfect example, because in the early days, it was promoted as a healthy. Doctors even promoted it. Of course, this was also due to marketing and all that kind of stuff, but it took years for then research to figure out and also then communicate how bad smoking actually is. And it took decades to then apply it also societally and ingrain it into people's head, right? And maybe there's a correlation here as well to social media. I don't really want to go down that route and saying that this is definitely the same comparison or so, but because social media, especially from the next generation, is something that is truly ingrained in their generation, they are growing up with it as spending more time on social media than outside with socializing with people offline. I think that this can potentially become a real big issue. And first, years or decades later, it becomes apparent of how potentially negative those consequences were. And we can't really think about it right now, right? Because you see it on social media. And social media, I'm just implying all of those entertainment platforms. It's getting wilder and crazier with what it is that you're seeing there, right? Because everyone is fishing for attention, and especially like aggressive behavior, because people are clicking on it, watching it, and even if they disprove and dislike what it is that they are seeing, they are feeding the algorithm to make it then share even more so.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. Like if people are interested in this sort of stuff, I actually have one of my clients recently just went through a phase of like eliminating all social media and tech from his life, basically. And he took inspiration from this deep work, and also digital minimalism was like some of the books that he read.
Cal Newport.
Yes, Cal Newport, that's the one. So I might actually try and look at that. It's kind of challenging for us to some extent, because social media is like, and online coaches, it's like marketing in a sense. And also, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, there are definitely positives to social media. It's just kind of balancing 100%. And weighing it up for yourself and not getting kind of caught up in it. But yeah, the extreme, man, there's extremes of like, I see extreme nudity on social media, which I'm like, how old do you have to have an Instagram account? I'm just like, this is crazy that like a kid could see this. And then, like you said, the what's it called, the aggressiveness or the kind of I can't remember what the word you used now. What's it gone? But anyway, people being aggressive and that sort of stuff. Like it's wild to see that. And then from like just joking about like drug use and steroids, it's kind of crazy. And I guess it's very hard for Instagram to try and manage and like moderate all of that, clearly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, how many people are using that on a daily basis? How many, I don't know, posts are being done on an hourly basis? It's next to impossible to actually then oversee this. And as soon as it has spread, you can't really put the genie back into a bottle, so to speak, when it comes to the content itself. And I mean, it's once again outside of our scope of practice, of course, to talk about it. This is just our own opinion and our own perception of things. And there's probably a lot that we don't even know about when it comes to data that has not even been published or researched, because it is a fairly new phenomenon. And especially in Germany, the impact that social media had on German society hasn't really been researched that well. I think that in the US, it's a little bit better research so far, but we still lack so much context when it comes to this. And that's why, once again, we can only, of course, give our own opinion to the matter, which is not always the best opinion about something like this.
For sure.
Let's take a short break, and then let's come back for another thing here.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
What is it that you wanted to say, Steve? Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. It was only that I had my first, what do you call it? Like a fake account.
Oh, really?
So someone who made Revive Stronger, and then I think it was like underscore at the end. So random. Someone sent it to me, so thank you to that person. And I reported them, and I have a previous client / friend who works for Meta, and I kind of reached out and I was like, would you be able to help me with this? So he's flagged it up, so hopefully it gets taken care of. But I have no idea what their incentive is to create that account. Like they just like screenshot some of my posts and reposted them, and like there's no links. I don't know if they're DMing people asking for money,
probably
or something
like this.
weird. Yeah.
Thing is, though, it's weird that with your following base that it's only happened now, because I've seen people with 10,000 followers being imitated, and I was just like, why the heck would you try to imitate that person? I mean, no offense, he's probably a good guy and all that kind of stuff, but
Sure.
why not then a bigger account?
Yeah, I don't know. It's so weird how that can happen, but I was just like, I didn't want to like share it to, I don't know why I didn't want to make it into a thing or like anything. So I was just like, hey, let's see if I can just report it or whatever. But maybe that's my punishment for not having that blue tick and paying for it, because I don't know if it makes it easier to get rid of those accounts if you have that. Maybe I don't even know, but yeah, I just thought it was funny.
I can't say anything about blue ticks. So on another note, Steve, how are things going on your end? Are you a little bit fresher now, because you said that you have been suffering from a little bit of a sickness or illness symptoms, and then also, of course, with all of the competitors having competed over the past weeks, are you feeling better? Are things going the way that you intended to?
Yeah, everything's going super well, actually. So I finished up my last meso. Obviously, I was kind of sick towards the end of it, and I kind of finished it up, and I think I deloaded / took 4 days. Actually, I didn't take 4 days off the gym. I kind of did 2 light sessions, I think. And then I had the WMBF on the weekend where I judged. Then I got back into things. So I'm in my second week, just like you, this week of this new meso. And yeah, things are going smoothly. Just kind of, I had some like body weight fluctuations as you do, where I was like, man, I've been holding just under 190 pounds, 189 pounds for like, it's like a month. I was like hovering around there. So I just moved calories up a little bit, and then boom, I gained like 3 pounds overnight. And I'm like, what the fuck? Mm-hmm. And then it's kind of come back down, as you imagine. So I only made like an 100 calorie adjustment. I've been very similar calories actually ever since finishing my mini cut. As I said, I've just been trying a bit of a slower approach, and it seems to be working out just fine. So I'm hovering around 190, just over at the moment. So that's kind of where I wanted to be at this point. And then, yeah, I mean, training's going well. I made a few exercise rotations, kind of similar to yourself. A few back movements, I think, a couple of back movements, just ones that I've been running for like, I don't know, you get to a point where, yeah, it still feels okay, but I'm like, could something else feel a little bit better? And just like, there's no reason I need to run something for like 6 months plus. Like, there's no reason I need to do that. So yeah, leg press, I don't know how long I've been running a leg press for, but probably ever since I moved to Yorkie, so like a couple of years, like something ridiculous. It gives me a really good stimulus, but man, it fucks me up systemically. Yeah. And I get kind of nervous before all of that. So I haven't used the pendulum squat in like a year because it upset my knee, but it felt really good actually. I don't know if I had changed my approach of using it or whatever, but it felt great. And also, it was kind of a bit of a fresh slate. You know, when you come to an exercise, you haven't done it for ages and you don't really look at old loads. You just take it for what it is. You use the technique that you know is good and you just go with it. And I was like, that actually felt real nice. So I was happy with how that felt, especially because it's that Watson pendulum, which a lot of people don't get on with. It actually felt fine. And yeah, I think that's most of everything. Everything's running pretty damn smoothly. So yeah, a few exercise rotations, but mostly very similar. And yeah, it's just nice when you do, like you said, when you put in that new movement and it just, for whatever reason, it's ever so slight adjustment. Like I moved from a belt squat RDL to barbell RDLs or straight leg deadlifts, whatever. And it just felt great. Like psychologically, I was excited for it again. It just, everything felt really good. Just the way you move is ever so slightly different. And I was just like, that SFR just immediately felt much better. And it's just, again, for people finding that sweet spot of like, you don't want to rotate too soon. And I prefer someone to probably rotate out a little later than they think versus earlier than they should, like really milk out an exercise. Don't get injured, of course, if it's causing any like discomfort, rotate out like very quickly. But if it's still feeling pretty good, it's just progress is a bit slow. Like I'm not like rotate out immediately then. Like try and eke it out for like everything you can.
And also, what are you expecting with other exercises? Yes, it will feel great as well in the first initial kind of days, and then all of a sudden you're at the same point. It's kind of like, I don't know, you're in a relationship with someone. And yes, at some point, the honeymoon phase is over and then it's a true proper relationship. Start to appreciate it though, what it is that you have. And hopefully it will hold for the rest of your life. And if you then need to change it, I've tried to milk it out as best as you can and save the relationship, you know? If it then doesn't really work out because of whatever reason, right? Because you're hurt or so, then move over to something else.
Yeah. So, and actually on that note with the barbell straight leg deadlift, it's the first time I've been able to legitimately do a deficit on a straight leg deadlift. Like I've never had the mobility for it or the control without my lower back rounding. I remember trying it during lockdowns because all I had was barbell. And so I was just doing that for ages. So I was like, I'll try a deficit. And I couldn't achieve that range of motion and control. So
and do you think it has to do with just having done this movement long enough so that you're forcing yourself into that position?
I think having done the belt squat, because the belt squat allowed me to open up into that position and control that full range. Whereas I've never been able to do it with like dumbbells or a barbell. So I think the belt squat, for whatever reason, because it gives you that extra stability and you can really control things down, it just allowed me to get a range of motion I've never been able to achieve. So I think having done that for basically a year, it just meant when I got to the barbell, I just did it and I was like, oh, holy shit. Like even when I was doing it in my deload, I was doing it with 20s on the side. I was like, man, I'm hitting the floor and I'm like, I got more range in me. Then I tried the deficit. I was just like, hey, this actually, it's on the, like, the deficit's fairly decent too. It's not like a tiny deficit. It's like a couple of inches. And I'm right at my limit there, but I'm like, this is nice. So that was quite a good lesson in some ways.
No, absolutely. I find it always so fascinating, especially also over the years, how you're now much more capable of going into a proper squat Whereas when we started out, kind of 90 degrees, everything was, which was slightly below this, was already a challenge because you hadn't, you didn't have the mobility to really force yourself into a proper position there. And then just by then doing the squat more and more often, practicing that movement, you're now able to actually go all the way down.
Yeah, I think there's mobility is it, and then also like, I don't know if it's like the coordination or neuromuscular control and
Probably,
like figuring
yes.
out your positioning. Yeah, that seems to have helped. So yeah, everything's running smoothly, and yeah, I just know I've got a bump in the road next weekend, and I'll just have to kind of navigate that as best I can. I'll be able to train upper body for a good few days after it, and then maybe, I don't know, you know better than I do with that, how long it takes for me to be able to train lower body hard, but hopefully it's like, I don't know, if I can get in there like a half a week after, that'd be great.
Yeah, it really depends on how much it is that you're getting covered, and yeah, how hard it is for you, the entire session, how much swelling there's going on.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe you're lucky and you are ready like 2 or 3 days after.
Yeah. So I'm not concerned about it. I think that's something actually you can pull from that deload study where they kind of had that like week off in the middle after like 4 weeks. They didn't lose anything in that period of time. So it's like, hey, if you take some days off here and there, it's really not going to make or break your progress. So, and if anything, it's going to just allow me to do like another 3 weeks after this period of time. So this mesocycle will just be extended a little bit because there's that little bit of extra recovery on the muscles at least. So, and then I was due a mini cut at the end of that. And then that would be like the last mini cut before my final mass, before then prep would begin.
All right. And when would that be? Like timeline?
Let me actually get it up for you so I don't say it wrong, because I have it all on my screen here.
Would you be doing, just in the meanwhile, would you be doing or aiming for several shows again, or would you be way more specific this time around, just bringing your prime for like 1 or 2 shows?
So, yeah, it's a good question. I have the same shows lined up as what I did, pretty much the same shows as what I had lined up 2021. So UK FBA qualifier, UK FBA finals, WNBF, hopefully WNBF Worlds. So that would be 4 shows, which I think is a decent number to like really prioritize. But especially having had clients compete across Europe and see like WNBF Netherlands, WNBF. I mean, I don't think I'd go and do Germany. Fuck you guys. Like, that's this weekend. I have a client who's competing there. But man, the quality there is just unbelievable. I'm just like, why do I do that? But then there's like Ireland. I just saw Steph Noble go to, I think it was Switzerland she was at, which looked really good. So I'm like, part of me is like, oh, it'd be cool to be able to like travel to these European shows and try some of those out. Especially like if I want that WNBF Pro card, I think part of me having to work for it is not just be like, hey, the only place I can ever earn it is the UK Supernaturals or Worlds. Hey, I could earn it. There's several European shows I could try and see if I could earn it at one of those. But it's just like, you know, the hassle of flying, traveling, everything on top of already what prep is. It's not easy to do all of that. So
I think though, Steve, I think this brings or hits home a very important message because I think most people are aware of that prep is also expensive or can be expensive depending on where it is that you're located. But you probably have to take into consideration that you need to travel. And if you plan that well in advance, you can make a proper trip without it, I don't know, costing so much of a fortune, because of course we all know, or most people know, that the closer you book to the actual date, the more expensive it probably becomes. And if you know far in advance, all right, these are the shows that I would like to do. This is what I want to do in terms of traveling. Can I afford it? What would that cost? What would that imply? And if you then have more than a year or kind of a year now to plan things out, I think that's proper time to actually then prepare for it, not just in a physical sense, but also from a monetary perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I need to really look at seriously, because part of me is still like, I don't know. I don't know why I have this mindset surrounding prep, but I still have it like, oh, maybe I'll compete next year. I'm not like set in stone. Yeah. I don't know why. There's something nice about it. I know Jeff Alberts for the longest time had that mentality of like, hey, I don't have shows set in stone. I'll prep until I'm good for a show. And so I kind of, part of me likes not having the set in stone shows or whatever, but I know like I want to do the WNBF Supernaturals. I know I want to compete with the UK FBA. So those ones I think are pretty much there. Maybe I'll pick out one European show, and it might just be Ireland or something like that, where it's like not too far, like pretty local, and I might do something like that. But yeah, so in terms of when prep would start, and I think, I don't know, I might change my timelines and might start it literally like 5 weeks earlier than this, but it'll be about mid-May when I'd be starting true prep. So that would be, if I started mid-May when I have it planned, that would be 16 weeks out from my first show, which isn't a ton of time, but I also don't have the crazy amount to lose. It will be close to 10% of my body weight. And
you also know yourself that well. You can push, you can be aggressive about it. And it's something that we've discussed already the last time of, do you want to feel exhausted because you've prepped for so long, or do you want to feel exhausted because you've pushed hard?
Yeah, it's the only thing that makes me question myself sometimes is I just see people like, again, good examples like Dirk. Like you just see, and you shouldn't, and I know it's a terrible idea to compare yourself to one of the leanest individuals on earth, but it's like, man, do I just need more time to bring that? And like I look back at my 2021 prep and I'm like, would more time have brought a better look? And I think we also maybe talked about it where it's like, hey, I was losing weight, but was I really getting the extra detail, or was I just actually looking a bit less symmetrical, a bit less full, and lost my shape? And I think I did. So I have to be careful not to lose my kind of the goal of looking as a complete bodybuilder, not just a shredded one. Because I was like, in my eyes, I was like, I'm never going to be the biggest. I'm never going to be the most symmetrical. So I have to be the leanest. It's like, yeah, but that might not be the best actual overall look for you. And I have to work on maybe the fact I'm not the biggest, or the fact I'm not the most symmetrical, and a bit more size actually helps with those two things. And it might not be worth the sacrifice of trying to get those like fine details through the glutes. So we shall see.
Totally. And I think that the body is probably getting better and better in handling this type of stress as well. And that's why I also often think that the best bodybuilders are kind of in their mid-40s most of the time, or kind of mid-30s to mid-40s, somewhere around there. It's often the peak because they have just practiced, maybe. It's just, of course, a theory of mine. And also that the body's better at holding on to that muscle mass as well. And maybe it is a combination of those things. They have more muscle mass to begin with. In the prep, starting the prep, they are better at handling the stress, and by that they are better at maintaining the muscle mass throughout the entire prep.
Yeah, and actually it's a really good opportunity because I wanted to give a shout out to Eric Helms, and this is a great opportunity to do that. Not that he's in his mid-40s, but he has just turned 40 this year, I believe, and he just went pro in the WNBF, and it was just great to see that from someone who, like, both of us have followed him from like when he was just kind of getting into the field, coaching Matt Ogus with 3DMJ, kind of near their beginnings to some extent, to like becoming like a world-renowned expert in this field, and now he's like a world-class bodybuilder, the WNBF pro, and he's been gunning for that. I think this is his 6th season or something like that. It's really nice to see from also my perspective, because I'm like, it gives me a little bit of more of like, hey, yeah, keep going, because Eric, like, he kind of paved the path there a little bit in some ways. So yeah, it was awesome to see that. And I imagine he was like I think I'd be an emotional mess when I go pro. So yeah, I can't imagine what that felt like for him.
Sorry, there's noise in the background, Steve. You have to continue talking now.
Oh, I couldn't really hear it too much. So yeah, it's just inspirational to see Eric Helms do that. And again, he's like traveled to various shows this season, and clearly, like you said, he also planned that ahead of time, and I think that is really, really vitally important. But also, like you said, I think every prep you do learn yourself, and eventually I need to organize so we can bring on Mike Chalice, who competed this season, to talk about his prep, because that was basically his first proper prep. He competed in 2014, but it wasn't really kind of a well executed or well thought out prep for him. Not anything to do with really him. He was just very novice, and times have changed a lot since then. And so we just learned tons, and it's just going to help him so much in future preps. You already know his next prep is going to be so much better than this one, just by default of learning from the last one. So you just learn every single time, and it, like you said, it becomes less and less stressful and impactful you almost like your day-to-day living doesn't change that much. Whereas in the past, like it really took a lot in terms of like energy and time and focus, whereas it can more so act on the back burner. I also think there's maybe something to it where people tend not to get as hefty in their off season. They tend to stay a bit leaner. So they just have less to lose when they get to compete. I've seen that at least. I don't know if every competitor is like that, but a lot of them stay closer to their stage weight. And so they just have less of a journey to go.
It also kind of confirms of what it is that I'm always preaching and talking about, and that is longevity. And you can very much make the argument of like, what's the rush of getting, for example, a pro card or getting some titles when you are in your mid-20s or beginning of your 30s as a natural bodybuilder? What's the rush? Why are you so upset of not placing the way that you wanted to or that you desired? Because as a natural bodybuilder, you probably still have then, if everything goes well, another 10, maybe 20 years in you. Keep on going, keep on building, keep on digging. Like every other sport is like that as well, where you have to invest probably like 10, 20 years of proper, consistent and focused work in order to see the results. Why should bodybuilding be any different? And of course, there are always the outliers who show up maybe mid-20s, beginning of their 30s and just killing it. Absolutely. Right? But these are the outliers. And once again, if you really love this, right, don't take too hard on you if in the first or second or even third season you're not winning the titles. Right? And maybe you will never win the titles. Right? But I think that, especially you brought up Eric Helms, I think this is a perfect role model of someone who just loves this sport and loves competing and loves natty bodybuilding. And I think that, yes, he had the ambitions probably of getting the pro status and card, right? But this wasn't the most important thing in his entire life. He worked for it. He had ambitions for it. But I think that he would have been fine as well in his life if he didn't earn that pro card at some point. And I think that he would, at the age of 60, 70, whatever, look back and be like, was still a great time.
Yeah. That's my kind of philosophy behind it, is like, hey, what's more important to me is that I tried. Like, I would hate to have earned, I don't feel like I would have earned it. So if I got a pro card and I didn't feel like I really tried, like maybe I go to a show and I'm like, I know I'm not my best and there isn't that much competition around me. It's maybe a lower quality show. I wouldn't have, and I get the pro card, I won't have felt like I earned it. Whereas like just knowing that I tried my hardest year after year to be my best, that's kind of the biggest trophy. I know that sounds like, it's like, hey, that's pathetic, or like, yeah, you're just saying that because you're not that good, right. But no. You're just saying that because you're not that good or whatever. And it's just like, hey, but like you know yourself so well, like, and I know for me, just like the knowledge that I'm trying my best is like, that's what really counts to me. And again, if you don't try your hardest and you get something, it doesn't feel that great. Whereas when you've actually earned something, it feels so much better. And I agree with you. Like if you earn it, if you get it when you're like 20 years old, man, like you've kind of not hit the pinnacle, because obviously you can then just try and win pro classes and stuff, but that's a really early time. And what do they say? It's like the lion isn't as hungry on the top of the mountain, whereas the wolves down below, the wolves down below are hungry and they're like biting at you and they're going to be trying harder. Something like that.
Yeah, totally. No, because there's no rush in this sport. Well, I think impatience has never paid off in the sport of natty bodybuilding, at least.
No.
Probably also enhanced bodybuilding, not so much, maybe in the very, very short term, and then it's over.
Oh, on that note, Nick Walker, did you see?
Yeah, he's not walking anymore.
Fuck's sake.
Yeah, sorry for him. It was just delivered on a silver plate.
Yeah, it was. And that's exactly, it's not too dark, to be honest, but
it is. Yeah. His hamstring is.
Yeah, it's very dark. Yeah.
It doesn't stop. Yeah, I mean,
a lot of people are gutted for that.
All jokes aside, it is, of course, it is very, very tragic and very unfortunate, because I think he would bring something to Miss Olympia that would be just, once again, out of this world. He's just a freak, you know, and this is entertaining. this is what people love. And we've talked about it at the beginning of this podcast about entertainment needs to be even more extreme nowadays. And he is one of those people who is bringing something that is insane to see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, oh man, I felt so bad for him because I don't know if you watched his video, but as he was like halfway through, he just like, you could hear it in his voice. He was about to tear up and like it was hard for him. And I don't know, there's something about seeing such a huge individual who has very like generally masculine energy and like is very kind of aggressive and confident in the way he speaks, to then have that side too. It's kind of like, man, I've really felt that.
Yeah, not only that, especially for those type of athletes, they have an expiration date. You can only do it for so long before the body is maybe breaking down because you until you're not in your prime anymore. And that's why I think every year, especially then, counts. You may have a time window of, let's say, 10 years, and that is already far stretched here. And each and every single year of 10 years is a huge opportunity that you're missing out on, or not missing out on, but that is being maybe even kind of getting stolen or getting just slashed in general. And that is, of course, kind of heartbreaking, right? Especially for someone who dedicated his life to that specific thing.
This is something we're going to have to talk about at some point, because I think you bring up such an interesting point that we've spoken about off air before. And it's the different mindset of being a natural bodybuilder versus enhanced. I think people don't recognize it enough, where there's just inherent differences between those two people, where they then look at life a little bit differently and they look at their training nutrition maybe a little bit differently, because it's like you just said, like as a natural bodybuilder in your mid 40s to your 50s, like you could be in your prime. Whereas as an enhanced guy, it's like they are a decade earlier than that, maybe even like earlier than that, potentially for the person. So they have this way more short-term mindset of like, I must like, not to say a natural bodybuilder doesn't want to nail everything, but they might even go over the top. You talk about the 1% that make a difference. And I think the enhanced guys are like, well, I'm going to do absolutely all of that because I've got such a shorter period of time. Whereas a natural guy's like, man, I've been doing this at 10 years already. I know those 1% really don't make a difference for me. Like I've got another 10, 20 years in the game. I think it's such an interesting chat to like kind of, it's more like philosophical in some ways, but I think it just inherently has a bit like if you just think of enhanced guys you follow versus natural guys, especially, I don't know, competitors, you see the little mindset difference, like a Jeff Alberts or an Alberto Nunez versus, I don't know, some of the enhanced guys that you might follow. You just see they have a slightly different take on bodybuilding.
To make it clear, though, and I think that this is also what you're implying, Steve, is that one isn't better than the other. It's just, it's not to say that there's a negative connotation now to mindset. One is, though, a little bit more on the faster spectrum, whereas the other one can take it a little bit slower because of physical demands and the limitations that you can put on your body. And so that's why I think that there's nothing wrong in actually then taking the other route or so. I think, especially when you take it down that route, you have what it takes probably in order to achieve something and make a living through this. And by that, also have a career for the rest of your life. Because if you really win Olympia, most Olympians, at least, who are also a character in itself, they're making a career out of that. And then what's to follow afterwards, right? They're still making a living. Like, take a look at Jay Cutler, for example.
Yeah,
he built a brand around this, or Ronnie Coleman as well. Yeah. Even though that he's not able to walk that much anymore, he built a brand around him, around Ronnie Coleman, which was probably because of his wins. And this is something that you can't really do in natty bodybuilding.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just think about which one serves you, and different mindsets might serve you at different times. But if one's not jiving with you, and maybe you're a natural bodybuilder and you follow a lot of enhanced guys, it just doesn't jive with you, that might be the reason, because they look at it like their bodybuilding through a different lens than what we do. And yeah, man, on the last point, on the Ronnie Coleman, I saw him do a video where he's like affiliated now with Memmo or something, where people can pay to have him say happy birthday. And he was clearly had his phone here and was reading off something on his side, and like every now and then was looking over, and I was like, man, he doesn't seem like he's on good form, to be honest with you.
but he's just like, you can't but love him. No, opinion.
Exactly. Yeah. He is very lovable.
Yeah. Right. There's something about him that he just like.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do anything about this. But we're coming up on time. Steve, do you have anything else that you want to talk about?
No, I think that's it. No, that's everything. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. And I guess, thank you. Actually, final thing, I should have probably said this earlier. Thank you. So a few people gave us like what Revive Stronger stands for them. And there were some really nice comments. We always appreciate the comments. Comments are always well received. So if you've got any more comments based off anything we said today, please comment below. Give us a like, thumbs up. Don't know about subscribers, but probably if you're listening, there's a high chance you're not subscribed. So definitely make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube. Give us a rating over on Spotify. Subscribe over there or whatever podcast platform you're on. We appreciate you. And I guess we'll catch you in the next one.
Absolutely. Cheers, guys.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.